With UFC Fight Night Perez versus Taira just taking place over the weekend, I'll be giving you my best matchups to make for all the notable fighters on the card that you can now see on the screen, kicking it off with Josephine Knudsen. So with her, we obviously got to see her hand speed, her kicking capabilities, especially with those teep kicks on this card against Pilastri. With her being undefeated in the UFC so far, I think she does need to be moving up in the division. I mean, I think she does have that marketability there, being that, that sole female fighter from Sweden that trains with Khamzat Chimaev and other fighters from the gym that he's from. I think that she needs some tough competition that has a lot of experience, and I think the best person to give her at the moment would be Tisha Pennington. When you look at Tisha's got the speed as well. She's got a very good karate style background. She's got the front leg side kicks, and she was just out for 2 years and then lost that split decision to Tabitha Ricci last month, and she needs to get that momentum back. So I think this would be a very good, fast-paced, just fun fight that would test Knudsen on the feet and especially in the grappling exchanges as well. When you look at Tisha Pennington, she's very good at transitionally on the ground, keeps herself very safe from submission attempts. I mean, obviously Knudsen doesn't have any submissions to her game, but she has very good top control. So it'd be fascinating to see that sprawl and reversal game from the both of them, and it'd just be good to test Knudsen against that kind of experience. So I think you make this for either the second or the first fight of UFC 307. Now moving on to Nate Maness. Look, when you look at his career, I did say it in the predictions, he's only lost to very good fighters in his career. I mean, he's lost to Tigir Ulanbekov, he's lost to Umar Nurmagomedov, pretty much just solely out of that Nurmagomedov camp. And with him having 7 fights in the UFC and winning his last 2 fights pretty convincingly, I think he needs the top 15 shot. And with Sima Durji on a 2-fight loss streak, I think it's time for him to challenge for that ranking spot to see if Sima Durji can actually keep it now. I mean, he lost to Matt Schnell, he's lost to Tim Elliott. These guys are obviously in the rankings, but when you're losing those fights in the top 10 to top 15, that's when you need to be challenging for your ranking spot. And when you look at Sima Durji, he's got a lot of power, and I think he can give Maness a run for his money on the feet, especially with that power differential. But it's going to be good for Sima Durji because it gives him the opportunity to see if his ground game has actually improved against Maness, because Maness is very well rounded and Sima Durji is I believe he's 1-5 or 1-6 when it comes to submissions. So it's a great test for both of them, and it'll be good to see if Maness can actually get into the rankings after being 7 fights through his UFC career so far. So I think you put this later on a fight night in the prelims in around September. Moving on to Asu Almabayev, he has looked fantastic in the UFC so far, and he's just looked like a problem, especially with that grappling offense that he has. He completely shut down Jose Johnson, and he needs someone that can combat him on the ground at least to a certain extent. But I think combating that in combination with the experience, Matt Schnell is the fighter that has that experience and has that BJJ base that can possibly combat it. And just like Sima Durji, Matt Schnell needs to put that ranking spot on the line after getting slept by Erceg and finished by Nicolau. So it's definitely a good opportunity for him against Almabayev to utilize that UFC experience he has and that durability as well. I wouldn't see Almabayev finishing him on the feet. I'd be pretty surprised with that. But after Erceg absolutely destroyed him, we just don't know how his chin's going to hold up. So there's a lot of questions in that fight, and with a lot of questions, it makes a good fight. So I think it'll be very fun, and it's good for Almabayev to try and move up the rankings. And I know that Almabayev did call out Kai Kara-France in his post-fight speech, but I think it is just too early for him. Kai is just too far up the division, and he has bigger opponents to fight at this point in time. And I mean, he looks like he's going to be fighting Steve Erceg at UFC 305. So I think you put this one on the main card opener of a fight night in early September. Now moving on to Brady Hiestand. Again, just like Almabayev, an absolutely amazing performance by him. And I think he fights, and I think if he can fight and beat Javad Basharat up in the division and somehow finish him, if he can somehow finish him,
he will skyrocket through that division, through that bantamweight division. He has been having these like durable striking orientated fighters like Armfield and Dinar, so it'll be good to see him fight someone who has that grappling control based style that's fairly similar to him in Basharat. And Basharat is coming off his first loss against Ayman Zahabi, so if he can beat Hiestand after Hiestand has had that performance against Armfield, then Basharat will be right on track to make the top 15. So it's you know, there's a lot of wins for both of them coming out of this fight, and you know, if Hiestand can get through the way he got through Armfield and then get through someone with a lot of hype like Basharat, that is going to skyrocket him. And then if Basharat can do it as well, that's going to put him back on track, and especially if he can finish Hiestand after the performance that he just had. So definitely make this one for a fight night in late September. Now moving on to Lucas Almeida. Again, he looked great coming off that pretty brutal loss to Andre Fili, being his first ever KO loss. And especially with that striking, I just don't think that there is a better opponent to line him up than, I honestly think, William Gomis. Like Almeida, he's a very big finisher, and Gomis he's never been finished on the feet. He has been finished on the ground, but never on the feet. And I think it'll be a big technical test for both of them. I mean, technical test for Almeida on the feet, and it'll just be as much of a test for Gomis on the ground. So I think this is a very fun fight, very technically advanced fight. And, you know, definitely, especially, you know, when you look at Almeida trying to get some wins going again, coming off the KO loss, looking fantastic in this fight and hopefully getting another win. And then Gomis, obviously, with that horrific weight cut that he had at UFC 301, where he was going to fight Gene Silva, and if he beat Gene Silva, like, that was going to skyrocket him, because anyone out of that fighting nerds gym has just been looking fantastic. So yeah, a very, very high stake fight for either of them. And I think you make this for actually for Fight Night France on September 28th. I think that's a perfect time for it. And, you know, if Almeida can show out against Gomis in his home country, that's just going to be even better for him. Now moving on to Miles Johns. Aside from losing to Castaneda and Mario Batista, he has pretty much imposed his style and dictated the pace in pretty much all of his fights. He is another one that deserves a fight right near that top 15 space, possibly even into it. And I think the fight you give him is against Chris Gutierrez. I think Gutierrez is a very good puzzle for him to try and solve, because when you look at Gutierrez, he's a very technically composed kickboxer, uses his legs as, like, his kicks as jabs, so it's a very different kind of style for Johns to actually deal with. And, you know, when you look at Gutierrez as well, he's got a pretty good output too. And Johns is someone that does not use a high output and relies a lot on his power. He barely puts combinations together, but his power is very effective, and his forward pressure. But Gutierrez is so good on the back foot, and he doesn't actually mind when fighters forward pressure against him. So it'll definitely be a very fascinating, like, a puzzle solving kind of matchup for both of them. I think this is probably the best matchup at this point in time to actually combat Miles Johns' style. And when you look at Gutierrez, with him coming off that Song Yadong opportunity and losing, he did lose pretty convincingly in that fight. I think it's a fight that just makes sense for him, and it is pretty clear as day to make this one a top 15 eliminator fight. And I think you make this for a fight night in mid-September. Now moving on to the first part of our main event, Alex Perez. Obviously super unfortunate for him getting that knee injury, and then obviously having to get stretch it off against Tyra, which it is. I've looked at a few of those sports doctor pages and stuff. It's looking a lot like it's an ACL or an MCL injury. And with that, when we look at his matchup that we're trying to make, I mean, he's probably going to be out for at least 9 months. So it's definitely tricky to make the matchup for him. And obviously, I had the original matchup for him when he had his original fight night against Nicolau. If you haven't seen the matchups to make video for that one, I'll just leave a link in the description for it. I made the fight for him to go against Brandon Moreno, which is now likely not going to happen because of this loss. So I think we need to look at the matchup with between Almabayev and Matt Schnell, and take the winner of that one. And I think I honestly truly believe that I think Almabayev will win that one by decision. And I think with that fight taking place in early September, it would be a great rebound fight for Perez to get back on track and see how good his defensive grappling is against someone like Almabayev, who is looking like he is shaping up to be one of the best offensive grapplers in that flyweight division, especially in the next couple years. I'm pretty confident he will be. And then for Almabayev, it'll be good to see how he deals with that UFC experience of Perez, which is even more accomplished than Matt Schnell's. So I think that this would be a very good fight. I think it would be a good fight to make. I think it would be good to make around February next year, January or February of a fight night. It's very hard to tell in terms of that duration, obviously, because of that injury. But if you're putting it around February for a fight night, I think that gives Perez that suitable time to heal. And obviously, if Almabayev is going up against Matt Schnell around September, that's suitable time for him to rest too. Now, moving up to the main fight, looking at Tatsuro Taira. I mean, he was looking extremely sharp in that fight against Perez. He capitalized on pretty much all the opportunities he had very well, and especially in the fight. But I mean, overall, when you look at that rankings position, going from 13th to 5th, he has, he's taken that opportunity perfectly, and he is now ready for the top 5. But that being said, he isn't ready for Pantoja yet. He still needs to do more work, just like Asu Almabayev needs to do more work to get to Kai Kara-France. And if he can get it done against Brandon Moreno, then that's his ticket to get that title shot for sure. I think this makes sense because I originally had Moreno to be matched up against Perez after that Nicolau win. So it just aligns, I think it just aligns perfectly to actually replace him with Taira, because obviously that timeline, there's no timeline difference there really. And when you look at Taira, he took no damage and Moreno is back training now. So I don't see why we honestly couldn't have this on the main card at UFC 306 at the Sphere. I don't think we're getting like a UFC Japan card or anything like that as like a fight night or anything anytime soon, just from my knowledge. So I think that this would be a fantastic opportunity to put this on UFC 306 at the Sphere. You've got, for the Mexicans, you've got Brandon Moreno, obviously a crowd favorite, and then the whole of Japan is behind Tatsuro Taira. So that is a fight that is a great opportunity to pull in a lot of money, obviously from a business standpoint. And for either of these guys, it is a perfect opportunity to get back at that title. This would be a perfect opportunity for Brandon Moreno to derail probably honestly the biggest, or one of the biggest hype trains in that division, and that would get Brandon Moreno right back to a title shot. So yeah, make this a title eliminator fight, possibly the third fight down or the main card opener of UFC 306, obviously depending on how stacked it is. And if you haven't already checked out the Fight Night recap video for this card, it'll just be linked on the screen. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for more MMA based content, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next one.